Original practices is doing Shakespeare the way that Shakespeare did Shakespeare, so mimicking 16th century theater practices as much as possible.
In Shakespeare's day, you get a huge scroll, right, that a scribe has written out, and they roll it up and hand it to you. Here's your part to rehearse, and you can tell how big your role is by how big your role is, literally.
An actor would not have a copy of the entire script like they do today. Instead, they would have something called a cue script, which just contains the actor's own lines and then 2 or 3 words of the cue for what comes right before that.
And then that's all they get. They don't know the plot, they don't know what's happening when they're not on stage. They have to wait and listen and find out just like everybody else.
And you don't know who's going to say those lines. You often prepared your roles in isolation. You would come together for extremely minimal group rehearsal. And it's that heightened awareness and that heightened listening that causes this tremendous immediate collaboration that is often happening for the very first time in front of an audience.
And the fact that we're also able to select our own props and our own costume pieces, it gives us a lot of agency and autonomy, I think, to decide kind of creatively how we want to exist in this world.
What I'm looking for is to encourage the actors to really act upon their instincts and their imagination.
We also know that Shakespeare's plays would be performed in broad daylight, and so not only can the audience see the actors, but the actors can see the audience too.
And that's incredibly delightful because the audience becomes this huge variable that we actually can't rehearse.
Just like in Shakespeare's day, there will be a few select audience members sitting on stage who get to maybe even participate in the action a little bit. And we have live musicians on stage which will be providing mood music, transitions, all kinds of fun stuff to really create that liveness of the event.
So when scholars talk about original practices, they often talk about literal versus metaphorical practices. And that is to say, do we want to create a performance that looks exactly like it might have looked in Shakespeare's day, or do we want to create a rough equivalent for our own time?
Do we mimic the same rehearsal practices in the hope that the end result is then more accurate, or do we make it look accurate and hope that that is somehow more true? It's hard to know which one is the better approach.
So in doing a project like this, we are not trying to make any authoritative claims about how Shakespeare is supposed to be done or the right way to do Shakespeare. Instead, we're treating this just as an experiment. It's one more way to experience these plays, and it teaches us a lot about how these plays were originally written. We find that the end result is a lot more improvisational. It feels a little bit more like a sporting event than a live, polished theatrical performance, and it's a lot of fun.